So I'm recording. I usually like to start off with heavy breathing.
Yeah.
It really brings them in.
Then some chips, just a couple crunches.
Heavy breathing, sounds of people eating.
Yeah.
You know, that's the secret sauce. That is the good stuff.
Sprinkle a little flatulence.
This may derail really quickly. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Conversations in Community, a place where we have big conversations while building a bigger community. You just heard John Mleziva. In case you haven't figured it out by that soundbite that I chose, we know each other. We're good friends, so this should be interesting. We went to college together. He was my best man in my wedding. My wife and I have invested in his company, State Line Distillery, which, by the way, some of the best booze you will ever taste. The gin, so good. The vodka, good. The rum, my God, the rum. And he's got whiskey aging as we speak. And it's not just people who know him like I do, who love his product. I have a network of friends who barely know him. Some never met him, and they are obsessed with State Line Distillery. So good. So check him out if you'd like. But it's his business experience is why I really wanted to talk to him as part of this second part of a 3-part series I'm calling Starting a Startup. You can check out the first episode already posted. This conversation is a bit longer than I normally share, but he gave some great practical advice that was tough to cut. However, I did cut some of it in the interest of time. He has some information on how to raise capital and ask for money as you start out your business. I thought that was interesting, so I put the entire unedited conversation on my YouTube channel for you to watch. So, back to John. Owning a distillery or something like that was a dream of his since we were at UW Eau Claire. But after graduating, he was on a different career path in the higher education area. Then all of a sudden, he got a message that would change his life forever. And thankfully, for all of our taste buds, he was open to receiving it. Let's start the conversation out there.
I came across a program that was a master's in science in brewing and distilling in Scotland. And it honestly was, I still can remember it, like sitting back from my computer, and like the amount of excitement in my body was just, it was some more palpable than I think anything I had felt in terms of like a career. And I sat there and I ended up calling my parents and I said, I think I'm going to quit my job and move to Scotland and do this. And there was a long silence. And
all right.
And, to my parents' credit, like they were like, this is, you got one shot at this thing called life. If this is your dream, go for it. So, I quit my job, applied to the program and got in, and then quit my job, and yeah. And so I got into that program and I moved over there. And honestly, I went over there because all my experience had been in beer. I really thought I was going to open a brewery. But when you live in Scotland and are kind of surrounded by the art of distillation, there's another layer of romanticism and expressive quality that comes with distillation. And I just fell in love with it. And so it was there where I kind of shifted my focus and said, this is something I want to do.
So how did you because so often people have these dreams, but they never become reality. What was it that got you past that into action?
Yeah, I mean, I think, boy, that's a great question. For me, it was really taking time to allow myself to think about what I was truly passionate about and what I wanted to do. And while I love higher education, I still have a really, hold it in high esteem. And I love everything that I learned from being in that profession. The idea of me being able to create something from scratch with my hands and move through the process that when you start a day and you finish a day, you have something tangible to share with people. To me, it was such an exciting idea. And so at first it was just kind of in my head. And honestly, the hardest part, or when I felt the most vulnerable, is when I finally just said it out loud. And I started telling my friends and family that I'm going to start a distillery. Mm-hmm. And once I said it out loud and put it into the world, it became a reality to me. And in some ways I decided I wasn't going to, go back on my word in terms of what I said to everyone else. And I wanted to see this thing through.
So, okay, now you say it out loud. What, because for folks, the reason why I wanted to really talk about this, because I think there are a number of people out there right now who want to start their own business, or were forced into starting their own business because they can't find work, or maybe they're laid off, and this dream has always been out there, but now they're forced to really reckon with it. So now you've said it out loud, and I think hearing your path is good for people. What next? I mean, then, because you didn't major in business, you didn't do any of that. So how do you tackle all that?
That is where the real work began. So yeah, I started to, at first I started on my own, just kind of researching how to write a business plan, and talking to people that had written a business plan before. And that was helpful, but it wasn't kind of moving me to the end goal that I wanted. I needed help. So I actually applied to the Small Business Development Center at the University of Wisconsin, which is it's a taxpayer funded program, so free, to get help. And they, I had submitted what I had of a business plan, and they took me on as a client and under their wing. And that's really when things started to accelerate. So I spent a year and a half research and writing my business plan, talking to everybody I could about how to run a business like this. Because when I came back from Scotland, I was working at a distillery, and had a mentor there, but he hadn't opened a distillery at that point. So it was really just kind of talking about production side of things. So the business side of how to do that, how to write, a profit and loss spreadsheet that makes sense in terms of what you anticipate your costs to be versus what they actually are. That was all brand new to me. So I just dug into it. And so it was about reading books. It's about finding people that know a heck of a lot more about that than me, and then trying to soak up everything I possibly could.
If you were doing this now, married with a child, would that have changed anything about still doing this? Because I know there's probably some people out there who think, I've got other obligations right now. How do I follow my dream when I need a paycheck?
Well, I think you got to mitigate risk, or how comfortable are you with risk? I feel extremely fortunate to have a partner who pushed me along and said, this is what you want to do. I mean, my daughter, Chloe, she was 6 months old when we broke ground on this. Now, that was a lot. If you back out from there and say, you're going to have a 6-month-old and you're going to try to build a distillery at the same time, that was a lot. And so there is a point where when you decide that the risk is something that you can take on, and to be totally clear, like the amount of money it took to start a distillery, my wife and I were signing on the dotted line to say our house is on the line, everything's here. I mean, even though the company is an LLC, there is a point where the bank makes you guarantee everything behind that. And so we had a lot of discussions about, worst case scenario, we lose our house. Are we okay with that? We lose all of our savings and we have to start over and move into an apartment. And at the end of the day, we decided, yeah, we're okay with that. Now, thankfully, thus far, we haven't had to face that reality. but I do think someone who gets into their own business and it's a high capital investment kind of a business, you have to be realistic about the level of risk you're going into, and making sure you're willing to do that.
From your vantage point now, what are some things that you would have told younger John about this process that might be helpful for people who are just starting that process?
Yeah, I think breaking down what you think you need in terms of capital, and then doubling it. You hear that all the time, and I thought I had done that, but there's still more that I wish I would have had to start, which would have made the earlier years easier on us. I mean, we made it. We were scrapping and we were pulling ourselves up. But capital. I mean, cash is king, and if you run out of it, you're in trouble. So that's one thing I would say, is that in a business where you're going to be manufacturing or doing anything like that, you need to have the cash flow to manage that. And it's always easier to ask for it up front than it is to go back to a bank and knock on their door and say,
yeah,
I need a little bit more. So that's a practical, just purely financial aspect. I think the other thing I would have focused on a little differently is probably having more resources allocated in time, people and time towards outreach, to actually physically be out there hand selling our product. I think our story is strong, our brand is strong, our branding is strong, and our community ties are strong. But this is a really competitive market. And so to really think about that aspect as an absolute crucial hire from the get-go probably would have served us well.
You mentioned some of the tips. What, just generally, whether they're not necessarily someone who's putting together a distillery, but maybe whatever their entrepreneurial spirit is taking them, what are some things that you think is kind of key for whether it's their personality or just things to check off the box if they're going to make this, if they're going to make it?
They're going to make it. Well, I think you have to have some ability to manage stress in terms of risk. So, you never realize, or I guess for me, I should say, when you have a layer above you in an organizational chart, there's a lot of security in that. And then suddenly one day when you're an entrepreneur, that's gone. The buck stops with you. You're employing people if you've got multiple, employees and things like that. And so every decision you make feels like it carries a lot more weight. And then there's the financial stress that's just tied to opening a business, whether it's new or established. So that's one. You have to be able to live in that and be okay with that. The second thing I think is anybody that's going to survive and thrive as an entrepreneur needs to recognize where their strengths are and where their weaknesses are, and then surround themselves with people that can fill that in and let them do their work. If you're going to have them hired, or if you're running solo, you need to find mentors that you can bounce ideas off, that can tell you about your blind spots. Those are huge key things to me. I mean, building my team here at State Line was, and still is, the most important thing I do every day outside make spirits. But you want to have the right people hired in the right position, and then get out of the way and let them do their job. You support them and challenge them and keep the vision of the company going where it needs to, but let the people that you hired for specific tasks do that work. And I think that's a hard thing, because this is my baby. This is my dream. And so you have to have an element of being able to let go of some of that and say, I trust you. You're part of this team to make a decision. and or push back on my decisions and say, John, this isn't right. We should be looking at this, or we should be looking at this, and not have, not bring the ego into that.
How much does resilience play a part in all of this?
Huge amount. Yeah, I think you have to be able to not only be resilient, but be willing to change directions and pivot quickly. I think this mantra should apply to every business. I heard this many years ago at this point. It's, fail quickly and fail cheaply. So you're going to have a lot of things that don't go perfect when you're running a business, when you're opening a business. There's going to be hiccups along the way, from the moment you sign a contract to building out on a building. There's going to be moments that you didn't foresee. And so being able to take that hit and then say, all right, how are we going to get through this, and just keep on pushing. And so that's, being able to manage that and manage the stress that comes along with that are key. One of the biggest challenges of running a business is getting caught up in the weeds. Every single day I've got a million tasks on my plate to take care of. But you have to take the time to step back and take the 10,000 foot view. Like that, even if you're just literally putting it in your calendar, scheduling the time to close down the office door and say, like, I need to spend time thinking about what are our goals for 2021? What are our goals for Q1 through Q4? Where do we want to be in 2 years? Where do I see in 5 years? Because without kind of your direction and mission, you're going to get pulled in a million directions. And if you don't have a guiding North Star, it's easy to get off course, I think.
Tell me a little bit about State Line Distillery.
Yeah. So State Line, we're a fully grained glass distillery, just located about a mile down from the capital here in Madison. And I think that location, when I chose it, it's really important to me because it allowed us to be easily accessible from bike, from walking, from anybody, so that they could come in and actually see the process. So we pride ourselves on working very closely with local farmers, both for grains and kind of our botanicals. It's, to me, having a strong sense of community and pride in what we're doing is so important. I mean, just from our name, State Line, it's about that celebration of agricultural history within the state of Wisconsin. So there's so many things that we can get from local farmers that help create our product, that it strengthens not only our brand, but our entire community. And so that, to me, is so important. So we have a wide range of spirits anywhere. We started with vodka and gin, but now, we've got a single malt whiskey that was developed kind of in a recipe that I thought about when I was in Scotland. And then we've got a peated single malt and rye and bourbon, and coffee liqueur, and the rum, a light rum that's delicious. So it's just been a joy to kind of bring these spirits to life and then share them with other people. And then we have on site a beautiful cocktail lounge where we create, Mike, our bar manager, creates these amazing drinks, and it's all about an experience. We want to invite people in so that they can see what a distillery looks like, enjoy a cocktail without it feeling pretentious, and then have an excited conversation with a bar staff or myself if I'm there about how we do things and why is it different.
Next time on Conversations in Community.
I think some people are asking, what does it mean to thrive? I think a lot of people are asking, what does it mean to survive?